Taika Waititi's mysterious role in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is just another example of an actor who gets to have it all by being in both a DC movie and a Marvel movie. This is an exclusive club that keeps getting bigger the more superhero films continue to dominate at the box office. Every actor wants to suit up in spandex and either fight crime or commit crime eventually, right? Today's video is all about actors who have appeared in both Marvel and DC movies. Now, you know the big ones already, like Chris Evans, Ryan Reynolds, and Josh Brolin. So today's video is highlighting the lesser known examples you might not have realized were in both DC and Marvel films. Let's begin. The first time we saw Tom Hardy suit up for a superhero film, he really suited up. Like, to the point where he was a little hard to understand.
They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother.
The acclaimed actor took on the role of Bane in Christopher Nolan's trilogy-ending DC Bat adventure, The Dark Knight Rises. And although it's sometimes hard to tell it's Hardy underneath that bulking breathing apparatus, the actor doesn't necessarily need to be understood to be an intimidating villain. For the role, Hardy looked like he packed on a boulder's worth of muscles. And then we had to watch him break the bat. The voice may have been made fun of a lot when the film was first released, but there was nothing funny about how scary Hardy actually looked. He plays a good villain, but recently he got a chance to play the hero in Venom. Well, sort of the hero. The great thing about Eddie Brock and Venom characters is that they love to toe the line between good and evil. Sure, Venom wants to eat anyone who gets in his way, but thankfully Eddie Brock is there to stop him and only eat the bad guys. It calls for a crazed performance, which is why Tom Hardy makes a perfect fit for this Marvel movie. Michael Keaton is one of those rare actors that not only has roles in both a DC and Marvel movie, but also plays bird characters in them both. That's a fun coincidence. Of course, Keaton will always be famous for his dark Batman role in Tim Burton's original Bat flicks back in the 90s, and that alone is enough to cement his status as a geek icon. I mean, his "I am Batman" line sounds pretty definitive, right?
I'm Batman.
And for a while, that was the end of Keaton's superhero career, but that all changed when he played the villainous Adrian Toomes in Spider-Man: Homecoming, better known as Vulture, or Volchi to his really close friends. So with that, Keaton completed the necessary requirements to be considered for this list, and most would call that a day, but not Keaton. Not only does it look like Toomes is showing up in Marvel's Morbius movie, which might be set outside the MCU, but Keaton is also set to reprise his famous Batman role for The Flash's solo movie. So right now, Keaton is part of DC, the MCU, regular Marvel movies, and the DCEU. That's a very rare feat. Zoe Saldana holds a special type of record for appearing in the two highest grossing movies of all time, Avatar and Avengers Endgame, but she's also one of the lucky few who has appeared in both Marvel and DC films. Of course, she's most well known for playing Gamora in the MCU, a role that looked like it might be over given the events of Infinity War, but thankfully Endgame set things up so that we'll be seeing a different version of her character going forward. But the green-skinned assassin was not the only comic book role Saldana has taken on in her career, with the actress also involved in DC's underrated The Losers. There she plays a CIA agent who teams up with the titular losers and basically becomes a loser herself. Wait, I mean that in the best way possible because the movie is a lot of fun. In both roles, Saldana proves that she's one of the best action stars around, and it's a shame The Losers wasn't a more popular film. Then again, if it was a huge hit that spawned sequels, she might have been unable to do Guardians of the Galaxy, and we'd be in a completely different situation right now. The first Thor movie introduced the Warriors 3, Thor's closest friends who you'd think were important enough to have big roles in every Thor movie ever, right? Well, I'll get to that. Anyway, the first Thor movie had the character of Fandral, a charming master swordsman with fun facial hair. Josh Dallas played the character in the original film, but then the actor was too busy playing Prince Charming on Once Upon a Time to reprise his role for the sequel. This led to Zachary Levi replacing the actor for Thor: The Dark World. If you thought this would lead to a brand new superhero career for Zachary Levi in the MCU, well, Hela has something to say about that. After a sizable role in the second movie, Fandral was killed off almost immediately in the third Thor film. But things worked out pretty well for Levi since he now stars as his own superhero over in the DCEU. The actor, of course, stars as Shazam, a role that Levi will probably play for a lot longer than he did with Fandral. And it's better this way. Levi is a great leading man, so it's awesome his talents get a chance to shine in his own franchise rather than just being a supporting character in another. Idris Elba seems like he's on a mission to join every major franchise ever, which, hey, I'm not complaining about because he's always a bright spot in just about everything he's a part of. That includes the superhero genre. He's had a long career with both DC and Marvel. He started off with a role in DC's The Losers alongside Zoe Saldana, and then hopped over to the Thor franchise where he played Heimdall, a character that he would go on to reprise a bunch throughout the MCU. And even though this movie is forgettable, he also had a role in Marvel's Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance. If at that point Elba seemed like a Marvel man completely, think again. He's set to star as Bloodsport in James Gunn's upcoming quasi-reboot, The Suicide Squad. It seems like Elba is destined for a breakout superhero role given his talents, but he just hasn't gotten the right chance yet. Even though the survival rate for The Suicide Squad may not be great, hopefully his character will make it to the end and we'll see him in a potential sequel. It's one thing for an actor to star in a DC movie, then do a Marvel movie later on in their career or vice versa, but it's even more impressive when an actor stars in both a DC movie and a Marvel film in the same year. That brings us to Randall Park, the talented actor who's seen his star in Hollywood start to rise in recent years. Superhero fans first saw him pop up in Ant-Man and the Wasp in 2018, where he played Agent Jimmy Woo. The character was both a comic relief character, but also served as a great foil to Scott Lang.
Magic.
And then, just a few months later, we got to see Park play Stephen Shin in Aquaman, a huge conspiracy theorist convinced that Atlantis was going to rise up and destroy the surface world. Both characters will probably be seen again. Although it's unclear at this time what's going to happen with Ant-Man 3, we at least know Agent Woo will be back in the upcoming Disney Plus show WandaVision. And then Shin's ending in Aquaman seems to set up a prominent villain role in the sequel. It's a great time to be a Randall Park fan. You know Willem Dafoe is a great actor when he can be a Dafoe in one superhero movie and a DaFriend in another. Okay, I'm not proud of that. Anyways, Willem Dafoe will probably always be recognized as Norman Osborn in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies. He was the perfect first antagonist for Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker as he suited up as the dreaded Green Goblin, and it's almost hard to see him as anything else. That's why when Dafoe was announced as Vulko in Aquaman's movie, there was a part of me that thought he would ultimately turn out to be a villain of some sort. But luckily, that wasn't the case. Vulko in Aquaman was Arthur's mentor and was one of the reasons that the Atlantean king became such an awesome warrior. And those looking for a little more Vulko might be in luck. The Aquaman sequel won't be here for another few years, but we'll probably see Vulko in the upcoming Snyder Cut of Justice League, as it's known Dafoe filmed scenes for the movie that were ultimately cut out for Whedon's version. If we're talking about the most iconic roles in superhero movies, one of the top has to be J.K. Simmons in Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Simmons' J. Jonah Jameson was perfect in almost every way, so much so that future Spider-Man movies avoided the character altogether since there was just no way anyone could top what Simmons did with the role. And fortunately, Marvel found a solution when it was time to bring the character into the MCU. Just keep J.K. Simmons in the role. In one of the best mid-credit scenes ever, Spider-Man Far From Home revealed that J.K. Simmons was back in his signature role and will presumably play a larger part in the MCU going forward. Of course, J. Jonah Jameson is not the only iconic comic character Simmons has played, with him taking on the role of Commissioner Gordon in Justice League. We'll see Simmons back as Gordon in the Snyder Cut, but given Matt Reeves' Batman movie sees Jeffrey Wright taking over as Gordon, you can probably bet good money that Simmons has a longer future as J. Jonah Jameson than as Commissioner Gordon.
Could you pay me in advance?
Djimon Hounsou is one of those actors who seems to always pop up in key supporting roles, and he's had quite the career in the superhero genre. He first popped up in 2005's Constantine as Papa Midnight, but that was sort of before the whole superhero boom, so you're forgiven if you don't quite remember he was in that. Probably the most recognizable superhero role came in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy, where he played Korath, the character that famously questioned just who Star-Lord actually was.
Who? Star-Lord, man. Legendary outlaw?
And even though the character met a pretty grisly fate at the hands of Drax, Djimon got to play Korath again in Captain Marvel's prequel movie. But that doesn't mean he was done with DC movies. In fact, he's the only main actor to play two different parts in the DCEU. He's most recognizable to DCEU fans as the wizard who grants Billy Batson the powers of Shazam in Shazam. But he also played the role of the Fisherman King in Aquaman. His multiple roles and the timeline in which it happened means he went from DC to Marvel to DC, back to Marvel, and then back to DC again. Now that's versatility. A lot of actors on this list have been successful in both DC and Marvel films, but Jared Leto is sort of a special case here. Right now, Leto is probably most famous for his controversial take on the Joker in David Ayer's original Suicide Squad, but we all know how that turned out.
Really, really bad.
After months and months of hype with Leto's bizarre and eccentric behind-the-scenes drama as he fully committed to his Joker character, along with trailers that seem to promise a very prominent role for this new version of the Clown Prince of Crime, the Suicide Squad movie was released, and Joker was barely in it. And the scenes he was in didn't go over that well with fans. Yeah, it's almost a certainty that we won't be seeing his Joker again. But did Leto let this stop him from taking on more superhero roles? Nope. He decided to switch over franchises and play the lead role in the upcoming Marvel movie Morbius, which will see him play the famous living vampire. This movie is part of Marvel's growing Sonyverse that includes Venom. But since the trailer sees Michael Keaton return as Adrian Toomes, there's questions on whether this actually takes place in the MCU. Only time will tell, but hopefully Leto's participation in a Marvel movie goes better than his time at DC. Who's your favorite actor who's appeared in both DC and Marvel movies? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more awesome superhero content like this.